Hook, the factory that doesn't need light. Imagine walking into a factory at midnight. The metal door closes behind you. You expect to hear machines, workers, voices echoing across the production floor, but there's almost nothing. No hundreds of workers, no rows of bright lights, no human voices, only machines moving through the darkness. A robotic arm picks up a component. An automated system moves it to the next station. A camera inspects the product. An autonomous vehicle quietly moves across the factory floor. And then everything continues. No rest, no sleep, no need for light. This is the idea behind what the industry calls dark factories. Factories automated to such a degree that humans no longer need to be present at every step of the production process. And what makes this interesting isn't the fact that some factories have robots, it's the scale. China is building a manufacturing system where robots, software, data, and human workers are connected into a single industrial machine. So, why is this happening? And more importantly, what happens to the global economy when manufacturing advantage is no longer determined by how many workers a country has? Chapter 1. When the factory started running itself for decades, China's manufacturing advantage seemed simple: millions of people, low labor costs, and an enormous network of factories capable of producing almost anything: phones, electronics, clothing, home appliances, cars. But that model is changing. As the economy develops, as wages rise, the population gets older, and finding millions of workers for repetitive jobs becomes increasingly difficult. That creates a simple question. If labor becomes more expensive, why not build factories that need less labor? That is where automation begins to change the game. Look inside a modern production line. Raw materials arrive at the warehouse. Autonomous vehicles move them to the right location. Robots pick up individual components, place them on the production line. Cameras inspect the products. Software analyzes the data. And when a defect is detected, the system can respond almost immediately. There doesn't need to be a person standing beside every machine telling it what to do. The factory begins to operate like a single system. Machines produce, sensors observe, software makes decisions, and data connects everything together. That is the important difference. Automation isn't simply replacing one worker with one robot, it is redesigning the way the entire factory operates. And when it is done well, a factory can operate with fewer people and more machines. Chapter 2. China is no longer relying only on cheap labor. For years, China's manufacturing success was often explained by a very simple formula: cheap labor. But that formula is becoming less useful because if low wages are the only advantage, then as wages rise, that advantage should disappear. Another country could produce more cheaply: Vietnam, India, Mexico, or somewhere else. But China is taking a different path. Instead of simply searching for cheaper workers, it is investing in factories that require fewer workers. That is a major shift, and it helps explain why China is now the world's largest market for industrial robots. According to data from the International Federation of Robotics, China has accounted for more than half of all newly installed industrial robots worldwide in recent years. That number tells us something important. China isn't simply using automation, it is deploying automation at enormous scale. And scale creates another advantage. When thousands of factories need robots, robot manufacturers emerge: sensor companies, software companies, control systems, specialized engineers, and an entire supply chain built around automation. That is when the advantage stops belonging to a single factory, it begins to belong to the entire manufacturing ecosystem. Chapter 3. Are robots really cheaper than people? But this is where we need to stop because there's an important question. If robots are so expensive, why would companies want to use them? An industrial robot can cost a lot of money. An automated production line can require millions of dollars in investment. The factory may need to be redesigned, software needs to be integrated, employees need to be trained. So, why do it? Because companies aren't only looking at the cost of buying the robot, they're looking at the cost of producing each unit. Imagine you're running a factory. You have 1,000 workers. Every worker needs a salary, insurance, workspace, electricity, climate control, breaks, management, and training. If demand increases, you need more people. If you want to operate through the night, you need multiple shifts. An automated production line works differently. After the initial investment, the cost of producing each additional unit can become much lower. A robot doesn't need to sleep, it doesn't need weekends, it doesn't ask for a raise, and if it is properly maintained, it can repeat the same movement millions of times. That is the economics behind the dark factory. It is not robots are free. It is a very large fixed investment can be spread across an enormous volume of production. And when the volume becomes large enough, the economics begin to change. Humans are still extremely important, but their role can shift from performing every individual task to designing, supervising, and optimizing the system that performs those tasks. Chapter 4. The problem is no longer just robots, and this is where the story becomes even more interesting. If it were only about robots, the story wouldn't be that unusual. The United States has robots, Germany has robots, Japan has robots, South Korea has robots. So, why is China so important? Because automation is only one part of the equation. The other part, is the ecosystem behind it. An automated factory needs many things: sensors, batteries, motors, chips, software, control systems, component suppliers, engineers, logistics, and thousands of other companies to make all of it work together. That is where manufacturing advantage becomes difficult to copy. You can build a factory, but building an entire manufacturing ecosystem is a completely different challenge. That's also why bringing manufacturing back to the United States or Europe isn't as simple as building a few more factories. You need to rebuild supply chains, find workers, train engineers, find suppliers, build infrastructure, and reach enough scale to make the final cost competitive. That is a much harder problem. Chapter 5. The Real Competition. So, the manufacturing competition of the future may no longer be about who has the cheapest workers. It may not even be about who has the most robots. The real question could be who can connect all of these things together most effectively: people, robots, software, data, energy, raw materials, logistics, and capital. A country may have extremely powerful AI, but if it cannot turn that AI into physical products, its advantage remains limited. On the other hand, a country may not have every piece of the world's most advanced technology, but if it can turn technology into millions of products quickly, cheaply, and consistently, that advantage becomes very real. That is why dark factories matter, not because these factories look like science fiction, but because they show us in how the physical economy is changing. Conclusion: the factory of the future. There's an interesting paradox here. For years, the world has talked about how AI will replace people working on computers, writing, drawing, programming, analyzing data. But another transformation is happening somewhere far less visible. Inside factories, there AI isn't writing an article, it is inspecting a component, it isn't creating a picture, it is controlling a robotic arm, it isn't answering a question. It is helping a production system decide which machine should operate next. And that may be the bigger transformation because ultimately, the economy isn't built only from things that appear on a screen. It is built from things we can actually hold in our hands: phones, cars, batteries, machines, medical equipment, and millions of other products created every day. Dark factories are not necessarily a story about a future without people. At least, not yet. They're a sign that the role of humans in manufacturing is changing from people who directly perform the work to people who design the systems capable of producing millions of products. And if this trend continues, the most important question in manufacturing may no longer be who has more workers. Instead, it may be who can build the better system, because in the new economy, the advantage may not belong to the place with the cheapest labor. It may not belong to the place with the smartest AI. It may belong to the place that knows how to turn intelligence into things that can actually be built in the physical world. And that may be where the next industrial competition truly begins. If this story gave you a new perspective on business and innovation, consider subscribing to Audio First Documentary. As a brand new channel, your early support means everything to us. And before you go, what corporate story should we break down next? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you for listening. Think